The emergence of farm technologies integrated with a robust information and communication technology framework is still evolving in India, and it holds tremendous potential to both positively impact agriculture performance and enhance farmers' income. In the upcoming fireside chat, our speakers will discuss the catalyzing growth in farm equipment through digital and tech innovation. I would like to invite Sumant Banerjee, consulting editor ET Auto, to moderate this chat session. Over to you, Mr. Banerjee.
21st century journalist turned businessman Walter Bagehot famously said, "Adventure is the life of commerce, but caution is the life of banking." I do not think there is any other quote that can so aptly describe the life of a banker. What Mr. Walter and his bankers then did not have in the 18th century, in the 19th century, beg your pardon, was technology, more specifically, computers and internet. With the aid of these, the 21st century banker is empowered to take bets based not merely on intuition, but on hardcore data and analytics. It is especially pertinent in a developing economy like India, where access to credit and banking is at best still patchy. Nowhere is it more relevant than the agriculture and farming community. One person who is trying to not only solve this problem but also make a business case out of it is Mr. Sunil Prabhune, the Chief Executive at Rural Finance and Group Head, Digital, IT and Analytics at L&T Financial Services. He joins us today for a special fireside discussion on catalyzing growth in auto farm equipment through digital and tech innovation. Very good afternoon and welcome to ET Auto, Sunil. To start off with, I would like to ask you, we have seen a sort of a bull run in the agriculture sector over the last 2 years. In fact, this is one sector which has propped up the economy, which has been flattened by the pandemic. I'm sure your business would have also grown in multiple divisions. Give us a sense of what you have seen over the last year and a half.
Very, very good to be here speaking with you, Sumant. And it's also about a topic which is very, very near to my heart. Let me begin by addressing your question about what we have seen over last year and a half, and then perhaps also try to put it in context with respect to how we view this sector, not just colored by what we have seen by this year and a half, but perhaps in more broader terms. Clearly, last year and a half has been very challenging to all of us. Beyond the economic cost, the human cost has been horrendous. We have all suffered. We have all lost people who are near to us. Some of us have lost family members. And that we cannot take out of any discussion that we have over the last 1.5 years. Having said that, what last year and a half has told us is that our rural sector, our agri sector is resilient, it is strong, and it is perfectly capable of bouncing back from perhaps one of the most horrendous tragedies that we as a society have witnessed in decades. What we saw was that all through the difficult phase of COVID pandemic as it started last year in wave 1, the resiliency of the rural and agri sector continued, as was seen very strongly in extremely strong industry numbers in terms of new tractor sales. It was more importantly seen, Sumant, and this point I cannot overstate, it was also seen in extremely robust portfolio performance, collection efficiencies, all through last year, running from end of quarter 1 of last year right up to quarter 4 of the last year. This year as well, while wave 2 was far harsher on our country in terms of human cost, that same ability of being able to bounce back was on display this year as well. So, in broader terms, what we feel about this sector is that it's a sector of opportunity. It's a sector of resilience. And if we are willing not to look at this sector in broad brush, but are able to take granular view of multiple states, districts, pin codes, agroclimatic zones that make up this sector, then this will remain the sector of opportunity for perhaps decades to come.
Okay, okay. Very good to hear that. But when you say a sector of opportunity, how big is it? Because I would assume that compared to some of the other segments in the automotive industry itself, be it four-wheelers or two-wheelers, perhaps in the farm equipment side, the penetration of banking and lending is still not very ideal. So there is a lot of headroom and upside for growth for companies like you and your peers. So give us a sense of where we are today, both in terms of the mechanization itself of agriculture, and based on that, the kind of lending and finance which is already there, and where can we go? So maybe you can compare India to some of the other developed economies, be it Europe or North America, where we can say that we have to go there and we are right now here. So the opportunity, what is the whole overall quantum of opportunity that we are talking here?
So it's a classic case of a businessman coming to an island where nobody wears the shoes. It can either be looked at as a disaster or it can be looked at as a tremendous business opportunity. And we prefer to look at definitely this as a context for a big business opportunity. Let's look at some of the broad numbers, right? In developed markets where agriculture is far more mechanized, close to 100% of tilling happens through mechanical power. If you look at agriculture sector in our country, close to about half the tilling happens through application of mechanical power. The rest happens through application of animal power or even human power. So clearly you can visualize the data which is available for us as an opportunity. We know that in our country, we represent 1/6 the humanity, right? And as such, the responsibility, if you will, or opportunity, if you will, is to feed 1/6 of humanity. To me, that's second delta, which is clearly the opportunity. Third delta is clearly looking at things from the perspective of the glass being more than half full. Today, when we go to underwrite for farm equipment, about 60% or so customers come to us with existing credit bureau data. 40% are new to credit. Now, one way to look at it and say that, only half or so market is addressable. Another way to look at it is that there is still a very significant portion of potential customers who have chosen to or not had opportunity to access credit and can potentially serve as new customers for mechanization as well as finance. So clearly, there are enough and more reasons for us to believe that the size of the opportunity is significantly large.
You mentioned that 60% have some credit history. And I would assume that while that is a significant number, but the opportunity rests with those who do not have any banking experience. And these are the kind of consumers that typically, in a way, make bankers nervous. That who knows, you can lend to them, you can see that they are farming, but then will they repay on time? Also, by nature, agriculture is a very, very fickle sector because it depends on so many variables. You need to have a good crop season. You need to have monsoons on time. Excess monsoon can damage crops. Drought can obviously damage it. So with all of these put together, what is the role of technology here? Because even though they do not have access to banking and do not have a history with any of bankers, perhaps there is technology available right now, and you would know better. And that is what I want to understand and let our viewers also know. What is the kind of opportunity that is opening up because of new age technology that you are using at L&T?
Sumant, if you if you allow me, I would like to link this to the opening remarks that you made for this session. You very rightly quoted how prudence and caution is perhaps the backbone of financing. Given that financing for agricultural sector or rural sector cannot be the gamble that we play with the monsoon. Clearly, work in terms of application of data, application of technology starts way before the first customer has walked into your shop. In our case, the work starts with development of complex economic models that take into account not just behavior of monsoons, but factors such as irrigation density, factors such as water reservoir levels, soil moisture levels, cropping patterns, prevailing MSPs, health of state finances, alternate means of income available to the rural customer, including through public works. It's a fairly complex data-centric model that allows us to take a broad view of how the sector is likely to perform, not just in very immediate term, but over a fairly longish term. So we are then not caught responding to how was the monsoon last month. We are able to look ahead and decide what stance we need to take. Second, coming to your very specific question on underwriting for consumers, farmers who may not have a credit history, that's where data plays such a big role. Data allows us to create lookalikes for lending to customers who do not have that credit bureau history, given that we have a fairly long experience of underwriting for customers and having observed their credit behavior. This is where we can move out of the realm of conventional wisdom, rule of thumb, just the smell test, which depends very heavily on an individual's subjective judgment. And you would agree with me that any subjectivity then carries with it a risk of bias, right? It carries with it a risk of personal preferences.
Right.
And to us, that is anti-credit democratization, which we believe should be the driving force behind any organization that is looking at financial inclusion as its mission. So clearly, making use of that data to take out that human bias, human subjectivity, bring in more objectivity, bring in more robustness, reliability. And Sumant, our job actually doesn't end with loan being disbursed. Actually, it starts there. The data then has to play a very, very important role in giving us what we call as early warning signals.
Okay.
Early warning signals are those which we get even before the account has turned 1 day overdue.
Okay.
When the account is still regular, what are those potential pitfalls? Is there something which is not going right in that particular PIN code or on a broader scale in that particular agroclimatic zone? Has that particular borrower shown stress with respect to his other loan relationships with lenders outside of our portfolio? All of these factors are taken into account to trigger these early warning signals, which allow us to have more specific conversation with our customer and to ensure that the account stays in good health and the credit is protected. So clearly, this is not a spectator sport. If I could use that analogy, it's a very, very closely involved full contact sport where we need to stay engaged, we need to stay involved, and data allows us to do that over literally millions of our customers.
Correct. Tell me this: we have over the last quite a few years, we have seen Jan Dhan accounts come into play, which has really brought to the mainstream a lot of people who otherwise were not in the banking sector. We also have Aadhaar, which is now linked with almost the entire population. And another factor which is playing in the background is the penetration of smartphones. So there's a lot of data being generated there. What is somebody watching on various social media channels or on the internet? So that also gives you an indication of the purchasing capacity of any customer who might not have any sort of formal history with banking. So how are these helping you in a way form a picture of who this customer is, even though he has never been to a bank and he's coming to you for a loan for the first time? Are these small things like Jandan accounts or Aadhaar or the smartphone usage, is that helping you as well?
Very clearly, I think you have also brought on to our narrative of glass indeed being more than half full. These represent tremendous opportunities. Just the fact that almost every Indian today has access to banking through Jandan account, just the fact that each of us have a verifiable identifier through Aadhaar represent tremendous opportunities on a scale which is very new for the Indian economy, first time for the Indian economy. Add to that, mobile phone has allowed us to almost leapfrog over many of the phases in between. The data suggests that today there are more in numbers, more mobile connections in rural India than in urban India.
Right.
And many of those connections happen to be smartphones.
Okay.
So it's not just about we, the financier, consuming the data. It's also about our customer consuming information, which makes his economic activity, farming, far more productive. All these technologies together ensure, and here I'm going to talk a little bit, Sumant, if you allow me, not just about us financing, but how all these things have come together to make for a better business model, if you will, for the farmer who is carrying out the farming activity in our country. A bank account means that the payment received by the farmer is transparent. There are no leakages that happen in between. National identifier means that the farmer is able to transact with multiple entities, including us, the financiers, in a manner, again, which is transparent, again, a manner which is direct. And mobile phone means that farmer today has access to far more information about price for the produce, about the right interventions for preserving the health of the crop, interventions that allow the farmer to take important economic decisions. And all of this, in our opinion, makes for a more conducive ecosystem in which we can lend and lend with confidence. Now, flipping it to the side of the financial, we obviously need to respect our customers' right to privacy. So obviously, we have to be ethical about the data that we consume in the process of either writing credit or in the process of managing the life cycle of that customer's account. Having said that, today the kind of data which is available to us through the multiple channels that you mentioned makes it really possible that with customers' consent, we can take very well-informed credit decisions and very well-informed decisions pertaining to management of the account. One of the tests of all of this being possible is how, for us, the delinquencies on the farm book have come down in a secular fashion and stayed down. How even in the worst of the COVID phases, the collection efficiencies we saw were actually as good and in most months better than the pre-COVID same months previous year. All this is testament to a lot of these things that you mentioned coming through on ground.
Which is very good to hear, because we hear that at the same time delinquencies in especially urban pockets of the country where there is a lot of stress because of unemployment, etc., has gone up. How different is the rural consumer, including farmer, compared to the other consumers across the country? Is he as willing to pay back? Is he as credible in terms of repaying the loans versus others who are bound by various thoughts of civil going down, etc., etc. And we hear that from time to time the government comes up with farm loan waivers. So he has been fed by some waiver or the other from some time to the next. So when it comes to private lending, how do you see this customer? Is he as honest as one would want to believe?
To this question, I can give you a very categoric answer. We find our customers, and let me use an old-fashioned phrase, honorable. We find that our customers take their debt obligations very, very, very seriously. Yes, sometimes the circumstances force them to delay some of the payments. But so long as we are there to handhold the customer through that phase, so long as we stay in close contact with the customer, the likelihood that that customer will once again turn back into regular customer is very, very high. Sumant, I just mentioned a minute back that this is not a spectator sport. It's a very involved, close contact sport. So this also involves we being intimately aware of the farmer's cash cycle. That when is the crop getting harvested, when it is moving to the mandi, when is the crop getting monetized, and when is the money becoming available to the farmer to take care of his obligations. So, so long as we stay in close contact with the customers or farmers' cash cycle, again, the probability that that account will turn negative is very, very minor. Most importantly, I don't think the customer or farmer chooses to honor his debt obligation because there is a threat of CIBIL score getting negative and all of that. It is out of innate desire of an ordinary human being, just like you and me. We do want to honor our promises. What is up to us is, are we creating the right enabling environment to honor those promises? Are we in close contact with the customer? Are we intimately aware of his cash cycle? And third, are we making the customer available multiple payment options, a lot of them digital, to make sure that repayment becomes convenient? Now on to the other topic that you mentioned. Sometimes loan waivers get discussed. Many times we as NBFC, our customers are not even part of that discussion. They are not even covered or eligible. But we don't find that having any negative impact on our portfolio.
Okay.
Those things, let's leave them where they belong.
Yes.
Our relationship with our farmers, our customers is very bilateral and very involved, and we trust in their sense of honor and the robustness of our processes and systems to together ensure that portfolio stays good.
So Sunil, now give me a sense of how technology has helped in core banking practices itself, the whole process of disbursing loans, of whole process of decision making. How has it expedited it? Because I believe there's a lot of work which now happens in the digital domain. And so the old ways of pushing files and jotting down everything, that is now gone. And banking itself, in effect, has changed. So at L&T, can you give me a sense of how has it become more efficient and fast when it comes to the core areas of banking?
Suman, this is a question that is very close to the heart of what we are trying to achieve. For us, paper was many years back just the mechanism of taking a process forward. We no longer need it, right? Every single case that is sourced through the use of mobile instrument in the hands of our employees. Papers don't need to move. Data and images move. That data and those images are processed by use of advanced algorithms and not necessarily by human beings poring over them with naked eyes.
Okay.
Ensuring that the decisions that come out are objective and free of bias. Disbursement, as you rightly called out, happens through a bank transfer rather than cash changing hands. Moving on, then the entire process of life cycle management of that relationship happens again not by movement of paper, but by our employee enabled by mobile device, carrying within it all the apps that are required to provide requisite service to our customer.
Okay.
Customer in turn has multiple options to engage with us. There are web options. Of course, there are face-to-face options. We will never take that out. But there are also options for repayment, like payment remittance offices. Customer can also make digital payments. So, a lot of choice has got created by application of digital tools, which helped us create reach, which has helped us create scale. Just about 5 years back, just to take our own example, our farm equipment finance portfolio used to be around 4,000 crores.
Okay.
Today, it is almost 3 times that size. And this expansion in our ability to serve our customer has been achieved only and only because we have embraced technology. Technology has created that reach for us. It has created that scale for us without having to necessarily, open thousands of branches across the country and creating high-cost infrastructure.
So paper is history, which is also good to know from the point of view of environment as well. You mentioned your business has gone up by 3 times, which is massive in any field of operations. Which are the segments that you are seeing maximum growth or the higher potential for growth? Is it tractors? Is it combine harvesters? Is it tillers? Where do you see the potential is high and where you are already seeing a lot of traction? Which are the segments that you are targeting?
We believe that there is obviously scope for further mechanization in our country. We believe that within that there is one particular segment that we feel is underserved, if you will. For about 9 lakh tractors that got sold last year, there are only about 3.5 lakh implements that got sold, which were of formal variety. Of course, there could be locally produced and distributed non-standard implements, but I'm talking about implements that are standard, that have a certain pedigree and track record in terms of the manufacturer and so on. So clearly we visualize this particular area, implements, as one of the significant areas within this larger ecosystem of farm mechanization. We are trying to we have come up actually with innovative products which can help generate financing opportunities for our customers who want to buy further implements to improve efficiency of their agricultural operations. We definitely look upon it as an opportunity as we go ahead in this journey of mechanization.
Lastly, Sunil, is there any challenge or threat that we should be wary of? Because from what I gather, you are saying that it's only up and away as far as farm mechanization is concerned or rural lending is concerned. Obviously, it was under-penetrated, so the potential is really high. But is there any threat or challenge that you foresee that one should be wary of? And how do you plan to counter whatever you are going to point out?
Sumant, we feel that the only risk is in broad brushing. Only risk is in looking at averages. Only risk is in generalization.
Okay.
When things are good, they are rarely uniformly good. And when things are bad, they are rarely uniformly bad. Our job as financier is to identify those pockets of opportunities and to avoid those pockets of pitfalls. So even in a year of good monsoon, there are always pockets where you will have deficient monsoon or even scanty monsoon. And even in a year of drought, you will have pockets where there is sufficient irrigation to carry out agricultural operations. And this example holds true for any other generalization. I do agree with your premise that the opportunity for agri sector, for rural sector is there, and in our opinion is going to be there for decades to come. We always need to be cautious and careful to focus on those specific instances, segments, and pockets of opportunity, and be careful about the pitfalls, because the picture is never really broad brushed in one color. You have anchored this discussion on the premise of technology. So let me build on that. And it is technology and data intelligence that allows us and will allow us to make sure that we stay within those pockets of opportunities and try our best to avoid those pitfalls as we go forward, trying to contribute to this rural story and being beneficiaries of that story as well.
Absolutely. It is after all technology itself which has allowed us to have this interaction today, even though we are sitting so far away for obvious reasons. Thank you so much, Sunil, for taking time out and for this lovely discussion. It was very eye-opening, at least for me. I hope for our viewers as well. Look forward to having more chats with you in future, and all the very best with the zeal that you are carrying in the work that you do. Thanks a lot. And once again, thank you so much for coming to ET Auto.
Thank you so much, Sumant. Truly appreciate this interaction. Truly appreciate you inviting me into this interaction. Wish you all the very best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prabhoon and Mr. Banerjee, for an engaging and insightful discussion. Dear viewers, apart from these sessions, there is an expo area as well, where our partners have set up their booths. Explore the area for useful videos and presentations. Stay tuned for the next session.